Chapter 28. Papa always said that he was dominated by females, and that there was no use having democratic elections in the family, since he would get voted down. His big complaint was that we all stuck together. Occasionally, though, Mama sided with him, like in the matter of choosing the boat. This was convenient because when things went wrong, like in the matter of the boat, he knew where to lay the blame. In the matter of boasts, Papa was an expert. He had rowed on the University of Wisconsin crew during his college days. He had sailed on boats on the Mississippi River and on almost every kind of ship from almost every port on the West Coast, from Southern California to Alaska. He took the ferries around the Puget Sound area frequently, and when Seattle was coming to grips with the pollution of Lake Washington, he knew about one of the solutions, the chlorine boat. We small potatoes were experts on that too. The old launch came to Seward on the day before our lessons. The lifeguards kept the swimmers out of the water during the operation, and for several hours afterwards. We didn't mind staying out. The water stung our eyes, and we complained endlessly about the strong, offensive odor. Nothing excited Papa more than looking out onto the lake and seeing the long, sleek shells of the University of Washington crew streaking by. Papa felt a special kinship. Sometimes he would walk out to the log rafts on the Seward Park Peninsula, where the crews pulled in to rest and fraternize with the oarsmen. Papa kept us informed about their activities. Their first big accomplishment had been in 1923, when they had gone east, virtually unknown to the crewing world, and won the Nationals. For years, they dominated the sport, and won the Olympics in 1936. Papa explained the technique of rowing. See how perfectly coordinated they are. The fellow in the front with the megaphone calls out the stroke. See, when they bring the oars back, they allow just enough clearance so they don't catch a crab. What's catch a crab, Papa? I asked. Don't you know, dummy? Dor said. At Copolis. We wade in the lagoons until a crab bites our toes, and after we get him off, Mama cooks him in the big pot and we bandage up our toes. I know that, dummy, but how do you catch a crab rowing on Lake Washington? Papa felt it was time to intercede. He gave us a scientific explanation of how to catch a crab while rowing. We didn't understand, but that was all right. We were about to find out about catching crabs soon enough. When that time came, no amount of scientific knowledge could have helped. Papa and Mac often engaged in nautical discussions in the backyard by the fish pond. Papa had just cleaned the pond and was pouring in new, tiny fish. Mac remarked, I thought you weren't going to stock new fish until you got rid of the ducks. Papa sounded agitated. I know I said that, but you've got to admit that the fish lower my duck food expenses. Mac sensed that he was on shaky ground, so he changed the subject. Ever think of getting a boat, Roy? Papa raised his voice because the ducks were quacking up a racket from their pen nearby. Living up over the lake makes one kind of hanker, doesn't it? What kind would you get? Mac had turned up his volume too. Oh, a nice, slow cruiser, where I could go out and get some relaxation, away from the phone. At that moment, Grace called from her kitchen window. Mac lowered his voice. I think I'll buy one too, so I can get away from that. From the first day that Papa took us out to shop for a boat, he had trouble. His big problem, as we saw it, was that every boat he showed us had a roof. Well, how do you like this one? He would ask. We don't like the ones with roofs, Flora complained. It looks like something George Washington slept in, I complained. We want a boat like the Thompson boys that'll zoom across the water. We were all agreed on that. The Thompson family lived about a mile south of us, right on the lake. There were several similarities between the 3 Thompson boys and we 3 Bigham girls. Their ages matched ours. They were in the same classes at school as we were. Their father was an attorney like our father, and their mother drove a big car like ours. The only difference between our families as we saw it was that the Thompsons had a beautiful speedboat which zoomed across the water, and we didn't. Papa ignored us. This is a boat we can sleep on. We were on the deck of a boat that looked more like a houseboat. We don't want to sleep on a boat. Mama had not been keen on buying a boat. She was not a natural-born fish. Papa had terminated her swimming lessons when she had failed to cooperate. More specifically, she sank when he stopped holding her up. Papa explained, if Mama has to be in the lake, she'd rather get there by jumping off her horse and letting the boys catch her. It seemed that she was at least willing to test the waters. She came up from the galley and said, we can cook on it. We don't want to cook on it, Papa finally said in exasperation. So what do you want to do on it? He knew before we answered. We want to zoom across the water. Yeah, like the Thompson boys do. I don't want to zoom across the water like the Thompson boys do, Papa said. Let's go home. Just when we thought that he had given up on the idea of a boat, he came home saying that he had ordered a boat specially built. He told Mama it was a compromise. "What's a compromise?" Dor asked. "Don't worry, you'll like it." "Will it go fast?" "It'll go fast enough." Papa took us to the boat builders for a final inspection. We were surprised. It was a beautiful vessel, with mahogany seats and trim, and it was topless. Our only complaint was that our boat wasn't brown like the Thompsons. Papa explained, "It's green so that, when we're out on the water, people can distinguish us from the Tomspon boys." Mama couldn't see how the boat was a compromise. Besides having no top, there was no place to cook or sleep. Papa, like most men, was unconcerned about such things and said not to worry. Instead, he bragged about our new fan-dangled motor. It's a big advancement over the old-fashioned motors that need a rope for cranking. All our motor needs is a couple of easy turns of a knob on the flywheel. Simple as Simon. At home that evening, he read the book of instructions and briefed us on the operation procedures. Not that we were ever expected to run it, but in case he had a heart attack or something. "You never want to touch that while you have this engaged, or—" I was bewildered, but Florence wrote to Mother, "We got a new motor, and I already know how to run it." We were all on hand when the boat was delivered to the boathouse at Seward Park. It was a Friday, and so stormy that you would have thought it was a Wednesday. The delivery truck driver, wearing a fur hat with ear flaps, said, "I hope this here weather clears up so you'll get a chance to try out your new boat soon." The boathouse attendant added, "Don't suppose there's a pleasure boat in the whole state of Washington out in this here miserable weather." He was wearing oilskin and a fur hat. Papa didn't take time to kibitz, except to say that he was from Wisconsin, and Westerners didn't know what real weather was. Then he gave us instructions to get our things into the boat. "Ship sails in 10 minutes. It was obvious that Mama was hoping to delay the torture for as long as possible. She was fluttering about, clutching her head to anchor down her hat. "Roy, do you think we all should go out in this miserable weather?" When Mama was exposed to a Southern accent, she immediately started talking Southern herself. The boathouse attendant watched us crew members throwing in mufflers, mittens, auto robes, pillows, life jackets, life preservers, life savers, an old buffalo robe, a thermos of hot cocoa, a thermos of hot coffee, cups, a basket of sandwiches, and a tin of cookies. Then, as he watched Papa affix the motor to the transom, he said, "See y'all got one of them new fan-dangled motors." "Easiest motor in the world to start," Papa called out above the wind. "We don't need no rope for startin'," Flora added. As we pushed off, Flora and I put the oars in the locks, while Papa gave us last-minute instructions. Row in rhythm, heave-ho, watch your hands, up on the way back, down on the way forward, otherwise you'll catch a crab. When we were clear of the dock, Papa took off his heavy mittens and began preparing the motor for operation. "As soon as you hear me crank, pull in the oars." We would be glad to. With the boat rocking and pitching like crazy, we were already having great difficulty with the oars. It was almost impossible to keep them in the oar locks, much less keep them going up and down in the water. We figured we wouldn't be doing much rowing anyway. Soon we would be zooming across the water. A capital ship for an ocean trip was the Walloping Window Blind. No wind that blew dismayed her crew, or troubled the captain's mind. Papa pushed a button, moved a lever, and cranked. "Pull in oars." We pulled in the oars, waiting breathlessly for the occasion. Nothing happened. Flora and I put the oars back in the water and began to row again. Papa turned back to the motor. Dorothy was the only one in the boat who enjoyed any degree of comfort. She was under the front deck, wrapped in the buffalo robe and drinking all the hot cocoa. Between sips, she gave us suggestions. "Hey, you kids are supposed to row straight. Sip, like the University of Washington crew. Sip." After several aborted attempts, Papa, never a jewel of patience under the best of circumstances, barked, "Don't pull in the oars until you hear the motor running." Even if the water had been as calm as the Dead Sea, we would still have had trouble with coordination. The oars went every which way, and we learned firsthand about catching crabs. By definition, it was when we had our hands up on the way back, instead of down, and sliced off the top of a wave, which sprayed everyone in the boat. Dor came up with another definition. The reason it's called catching crabs is because everybody gets crabby. Mama was bravely weathering the storm on the front seat and drinking hot coffee. Toward evening, when it seemed that there were no more miseries that could come upon us, Mama reminded Papa that the boat had no running lights. This she knew, because he had told her to bring along her little flashlight. In case we're having so much fun that it gets dark before we know it, he had said. Papa was no quitter. By thunder, he had set his course, and he was going to run it. With that, we learned the number one rule of the sea. What the captain says goes, unless the first mate gets hysterical. It was Mama's only way out. We were surprised at how quickly Papa left his position at the motor, which hadn't once in all that time given even a gurgle. He took over the oars, saying that he should have known better than to bring a bunch of females out on the trial run. Papa didn't look much more like the Washington crew than we did, but at least he got us back to the boathouse. Mama headed for the door marked Ladies, while the attendant conveyed the cheerful news. Y'all remember next time that Ah got motors for rent, Papa growled. As if that wasn't enough, on the drive home Mama suggested, Roy, why don't you take that motor back to where you bought it and have them show you how to run it? I think she knew the minute it was out of her mouth that it was the wrong thing to say.